What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was the mysterious transfer student in HighSchool DxD who shocked everyone with his hidden power? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check HighSchool description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. The screen came to life with image and sound. Everyone gathered awaiting what promised to be quite the interesting experience. What do you think we'll see, Sears X-chan? Seraphal asked of her fellow Mao, wishing she was sitting next to her little sister. Oh well, next time she would just have to secure a seat for herself. Lucifer pondered for a moment as he observed the book flipping to the first page through some kind of magic. It seemed to be automated, classifying it as highly advanced spellcraft. I'm not too sure, Seraphal. It could literally show us anything. Oni-sama, didn't it say something about the future? It did Ria's tan, but it didn't specify whose future, Sears X said with a smile directed to his little sister. It could show us just about anyone. I think it's about us, Mio spoke up, gaining everyone's attention. She observed all present to see if any would dispute her before continuing. We wouldn't have been gathered to watch if it wasn't relevant to us. A few beats of silence passed as the leaders of the gathered factions contemplated the girl's opinion. Reaching a conclusion after mulling it over in his head, Azazel voiced his agreement. Young Mio makes a valid point. Of course, we have to take into consideration that not everyone here is acquainted with each other. He paused as he directed a smirk upon Tsunade and her group, alerting the Hokage to his implication, at least, before today. Rosweiss, deciding to represent the Norse pantheon in favor of Odin, contributed her thoughts to their current situation. It's safe to say that we may become involved with one another in the future, but there must be a reason why. She crossed her arms and legs, steeling her nerves to be strong in the presence of such powerful and influential figures. We all have maintained a status quo between our respective factions. So, something must motivate us in the future to disturb our present state of affairs. Very true. But to be honest, I am far more interested in what kind of entertainment will be shown, Gabriel chirped, her enthusiasm apparent to all. Someone went out of their way to prepare all this for us. You're right, Seraphal said as she bobbed her head to an imaginary beat. She smiled after a momentary pause. Plus, they did tell us to enjoy the show. And we're really just going to abide by our host's demands? Jin questioned as he tapped a finger on his armrest. Why not? Michael replied with an ease betraying the situation. Yes, we were kidnapped by the aberration, but it's not like we have been harmed or incapacitated. Besides having a few of my abilities neutralized, I still have access to my power. Michael gazed around those gathered. A smile offered to all that somehow calmed everyone's tension, even his antithesis, the fallen and the devils. I'm sure it's the same for all of you? All present nodded in response, still waiting for the show to start. I just hope this doesn't take long, Yasaka spoke as she brushed her fingers through Kunu's hair. The young yokai was humming happily under her mother's grooming. I have duties to attend and my people need me. A sentiment I believe we all share, Tsunade stated, praying that Konoha would endure her disappearance. Of all the times for such a thing to happen, now was definitely the worst. With Akatsuki and Danzo unchecked by her presence, who knew what would happen? Still, we can speculate all we want, but it won't matter until this show starts. And wasn't that the truth? Everyone was getting antsy awaiting the screening of their probable future. Despite her anticipation for the viewing, Mio couldn't help but think of one thing as she waited. What would you think of this, Naruto? Her thoughts ceased as Rias spoke out. Oh, it's starting. It was quiet. It seems this show will be a narration, commented Venelana, easing herself into the sofa. At least, there are images provided. Hopefully, videos will be mixed in as well. It was a quiet filled with trepidation. Uzumaki Naruto didn't like that quiet one bit. Naruto. The Konoha group, a majority of the Kuo Pact, Reiner and Kuno exclaimed their surprise simultaneously. Immediately following their exclamation, everyone acquainted with the blonde Uzumaki stared at one another, questioning and suspicious glances painting their visage. Off to the side and ignoring everyone, Madaka rose an eyebrow in surprise. Will this be about you, Naruto? From the looks of it, this seems to be during your confrontation with Nagato. A stalemate ensued between the shinobi and the others, neither sure how to approach the topic at hand. Though, Sakura's patience was wearing thin. Besides the violet-haired girl she confronted earlier, now apparently her teammate had bonded with others outside of Konoha. It bothered her that she wasn't aware of Naruto's network of friends and associates. Did he not trust her? Additionally, the fact that the young women of the group were all blessed in beauty did not escape her attention. The mere fact brought an involuntary twitch of her jaw. Exhaling a breath to calm herself, Sakura decided to inquire about their relationship with the Jinchuriki. How do you know Naruto? It was the same question she asked Madaka, and just being reminded about that girl had her temper simmering. Rias narrowed her eyes, suspicion clouding her mind as she observed the Konoha group. She had to wonder what their connection was with her Naruto. Were they friend or foe? Naruto is our friend. What is your relationship with him? To have someone questioning her bond with the blonde was honestly aggravating, and Sakura just couldn't keep her temper in check. He's my teammate, damn it. It surprised those of the Kuo pact into silence, which Sakura capitalized on by continuing her verbal tirade. She gestured to the screen. The headband he's wearing is all the proof I need. Then, as if to cement the fact, she removed her own headband and showed it to all. This is our insignia and proof of loyalty. Our oath to Konoha solidified. It's our pride, damn it. So, I'll ask one last time. Sakura clenched her fists, her knuckles cracking loudly as she stood up. How do you know Naruto? Rias wasn't intimidated, instead her mind was analyzing what was provided, and she was sure that Sona was doing the same. It was definitely possible that Naruto was affiliated with these ninja from Konoha, but if that was the case, why was he in Kuo? Why was he associating himself with two devil heiresses who doubled as relatives of the Mao? Did he intend to harm them? No, I trust Naruto. Rias did, despite the information presented to her. After all, the blonde had proven his worth by completing a task to gain her trust and friendship. Also, he had risked himself by confronting a rogue group of fallen within her territory. Lastly, he had saved her from a loveless marriage, granting the heiress freedom to pursue her own romance. Ria's heart fluttered at the thought. So, then what was the deal? A sudden memory sprouted within her mind, of the small argument she had with Naruto. People were targeting him, but he never specified for what reason. Many possible reasons came to mind, but only one demanded her attention. What if Naruto had defected from this Konoha organization? If that was the case, Rias would do her damn best to convince Naruto to forsake his humanity and become a devil. The blonde would gain diplomatic immunity, protected from Konoha unless they wished to invoke her wrath, which would incite her family's wrath. He would promptly join the Gremory family, stand by her side as she desired, and then… Rias shook her head. This was not the time nor place to fantasize. He's my Oni-chan. Everyone directed their attention to Mio, who stood strong, defiance painting her visage. She dared the Konoha group to dispute her, yet the ninja couldn't, being caught flat-footed by the younger redhead's admission. The jaws of the shinobi slackened and the tension bled out of their forms. Naruto's my savior. The eyes of the ninja widened to comical proportions at hearing Kunu's statement. The weak smile upon the young kitsune's features only spoke of nervousness yet honesty. Are you serious? Tsunade whispered in disbelief. Kunu's smile widened as she nodded to her fellow blonde. Naruto's a hero. A few beats of silence passed as the Konoha ninja digested the information provided. The lull was disturbed by Jin, who decided to actually focus on the screening. Naruto was far too interesting of an individual, and now he had the perfect opportunity to understand the young man and see what makes him tick. It seems many of us, including me, are acquainted with Uzumaki Naruto. Jin paused, letting the information he disclosed sink in. Tsunade directed her gaze upon him, and he had to admit that the woman had the demeanor of a leader and warrior. Shinobi, huh? How interesting. We can sit here and interrogate each other all day, wasting time. Or we can watch and find out why we are here. He continued, hoping everyone would settle down to restart the visual novel. I'm sure each of our relationships with Naruto will come to light. Tsunade stared for a few seconds before she decided that the man was right. Things will eventually unravel, and hopefully, she would be able to ascertain her favorite knucklehead's well-being and whereabouts. Sit down, Sakura. Let's just continue. Yes, Tsunade Shisho. Ah, Azazel spoke up, an innocent smile upon his face. I'm also acquainted with Naruto. Everyone just stared at the man before directing their attention to the screen. At least that was what the young man concluded as he sat down to gather natural energy, especially when it regarded something that he deeply cared about. Kaneko gasped upon seeing Naruto practicing senjutsu. She was honestly scared for the young man she had befriended, afraid that she would lose his friendship to insanity, just like her sister. Kuroka though was pleasantly surprised. A human capable of harnessing natural energy was a rarity, and it made him all the more appealing to the elder Nekomata. She licked her lips as she promised herself to charm and seduce the blonde ninja. "Oh, I wonder what kind of children we'll sire, strong, beautiful, handsome. Boy or girl, blonde or brunette. Oh, the possibilities." Baby fever ran rampant within the stray devil. Unfortunately, all but the Nekosho missed the reveal as some were still deep in thought over their suspicions. Konohagakure. Last he saw it, it was not much more than a large crater on the ground. A barren wasteland, really. An empty area that once contained his home. What happened to it? Gabriel inquired, saddened by the devastation shown on the screen. "We were attacked." Tsunade trailed off, not wishing to speak of the near tragedy. The final clash with the leader of the Akatsuki was a very long and difficult battle, one that held very high stakes for both sides of the conflict. Naruto simply couldn't fail to defeat Pain. Everyone depended on him to win. He couldn't fail. He wouldn't fail. Eventually, after a long fight where the Kyuubi almost broke out of its seal due to the pain of losing another precious comrade, he emerged victorious. Defeating the last path of Pain with the last bit of energy he had left in him, earning Konoha's safety. A silent montage of the clash played before them, however, certain visuals were omitted within it. All present bore witness to Naruto's fight, the techniques and strategies he employed to overcome his foes. All were impressed even if most didn't understand the context of the battle, such as the petrification of one of the enemies. Though, those of the supernatural realm were surprised to see the blonde Uzumaki gradually transforming into a kitsune, and they wondered if he played host to a sacred gear housing the soul of a yokai. It was the only possibility they could accept. But, if that was the case, how come such a sacred gear never showed up before in history? "So, this is the Biju that you spoke of, Naruto." Yasaka thought to herself as Kuno grasped her hand tightly. Even through the video, the mother and daughter as well as everyone else could sense the power deep within the boy. It was probably the magic emitting from the book, emulating the sensation she guessed. The power was muted yet nonetheless unnerving. It also clarified on why Tsunade had questioned her earlier. Fortunately, the yokai wasn't offended as she distinctly remembered just how dangerous that red chakra was during Naruto's brutal assault. If that power was somehow beholden to Konoha, then the kitsune understood that the Hokage was merely doing her duty. Yasaka couldn't blame her for that, she just hoped Tsunade could extend the same courtesy. Rias and Yuki were confused just as much as impressed. Did Naruto not say he was human? If so, then what gives? A thought surfaced to mind, both girls unconsciously thinking the same thing. Did he lie to me? To think Foxy-kun had an actual connection to foxes, Akeno said, a frown adorning her features. I hope I didn't offend him. I doubt you did, Rias replied to assuage her dear friend. Naruto would have spoken his mind about the nickname. He knows that it's all in good fun. The Queen of Gremory smiled in gratitude, appreciative of her best friend's efforts. Well, at least we know why he has such cute birthmarks. They are kind of cute, thought Rias with a small smile. The Konoha group were awed by the fight shown. Both combatants appeared to be in a class of their own, inciting many feelings ranging from pride, inspiration and jealousy. Wow, Ino voiced out, summing it up nicely for her fellow ninja. Sitting by her lonesome, it excited Madaka to bear witness to his struggle and perseverance once again. Naruto, only you can do this to me. She anticipated the day they could meet, and what a day that will be. He's strong, Valley thought to himself, anticipation swelling within him. At first, he believed this would have been a waste of time. Time he could have spent training or picking a fight. As if to answer his prayers, something out there decided to humor him and focus the show on a warrior, a strong warrior at that. He couldn't wait to meet this Uzumaki Naruto. Hopefully, the blonde could grant him a hell of a fight. Except his fight didn't end there. Only the physical portion, the easier part. No matter how he looked at it, the blonde was emotionally battered after fighting Pain. His home was destroyed, his loved ones either badly wounded or dead, his sensei, his master. Ero Sennin. He had to face the man that was responsible for all of his recent anguish and pain, to face him. For far more reasons than he cared to admit. For closure. For answers. To end this. All of this. Once and for all. A part of him was afraid though. What would he do when he faced the man? How would he react? Naruto. Tsunade's heart went out to him, unsure of the answer herself. Granted, she may have not gone out on a manhunt to avenge Jiraiya, but she believed the best she could do was ensure the security of Konoha. And doing so required of her directing all her energy into protecting their home, forsaking her grievances and continuing her duty as the Hokage. But to confront the man responsible for her pain, face to face? She didn't know what she would do. After speaking to his father in his mindscape, he had to find out whether he could actually end the cycle that he spoke of. The cycle that helped to create this situation in the first place. Wait, what the hell do they mean he met his father? Naruto's an orphan, Kiba said in confusion, unable to wrap his mind around the possibility. The Kuo Pact and Rainier took note of that little fact. He might have made contact with an imprint of his father's ego within his own mindscape. It's an advanced and rare technique, but it is possible, especially for a mindwalker, Ino provided to ease her fellow comrades' confusion. Wait, does that mean that Naruto's father is a Yamanaka? Tenten asked, wondering if both blondes were related through clan ties. No, Kakashi answered before they could delve deeper. Let's just keep watching. Hopefully we can find out what happened to my student. Fortunately, they all dropped the matter. Could he let go of the prospect of revenge when he met face to face with the man responsible for his suffering? Quite the quandary this young man finds himself in. Michael stated, completely invested within the story. He desired to see the path this boy would walk. Would he succumb to his hatred or would he extend the olive branch? So when he finally met the man he will come to know as Nagato, he very simply, almost lost it. Naturally, Ophis commented. The dragon may have been ignorant, indifferent, of modern morals and ethics, but she understood the nature of sentient beings very well. Angels, devils, yokai and humans, it didn't matter, they were all the same. This was him, the man who took away Ero Sennin, Kakashi-sensei, hurt his friends, destroyed his village, made him watch as another of his precious comrades fell to his ruthless attacks. The members of the Kuo Pact as well as Rainier directed their gaze upon Hinata, wondering what exactly was exchanged between Naruto and the young woman during the clash. Unforgivable, but he somehow managed to rein himself in order to listen to Nagato's story. To hear what pain he endured that made a student of Ero Sennin turn into this. That man was his fellow pupil? Well, damn. Azazel whistled in disbelief. Was their education open to different interpretations? And if so, what the hell did the red-haired man learn during his tutelage? Talk about personal, huh? He was glad that he listened. Nagato's tragic story helped give him the resolve to truly follow in his predecessor's footsteps. He spared him. Akeno was in complete disbelief. A man that had hurt him so deeply was offered mercy. She truly did not understand how Naruto was capable of such a thing. Naruto had no idea if he had the chops to do it, but now he was determined to follow through with his master's and father's wishes. The blonde would take up his father's dream, his mentor's dream, and bring peace to this world. So, this is what inspired you, Naruto. Rias whispered to herself, understanding his sincerity and the efforts he has made to make peace a reality. Even if his dream only encompassed Kuo Academy at the moment, it was a start. And she was more than willing to help him. She would dedicate her efforts to realize that dream, and she was sure her friends would help as well. Michael and Gabriel smiled, content and proud that the young man was capable of relinquishing his anger. How admirable, Sirzek stated, impressed with young Naruto's character. He really needed to repair his standing within the boy's eyes and establish a friendship with the young warrior. I'm honestly impressed. I know I wouldn't have been able to rein in my anger. Neither would I, Seraphal. Sirzek replied. Oh, he still wanted to be Hokage, and nothing was going to change that. But after seeing the aftereffects of what this cycle could do to people. A quicksilver image of the Uchiha crest flashed across his mind at that moment, hardening his already rock-solid determination. Sakura grimaced at seeing the Uchiha emblem, conflicted and scared of what would transpire if Naruto and Sasuke were to meet now. After seeing what hate could do to the person he considered a sibling. That sentiment resonated deeply within Akeno and Rainier. The hybrid wondered what Naruto would think of her distrust of fallen angels. Would he think any less of her? The thought honestly bothered her, and she would admit that if he did, it would hurt. Akeno didn't want to lose him as a friend, not when her life has been so much more interesting and fun with him around. The latter was intimately aware of how twisted a loved one could become when they succumbed to the extremes of their vices. It seemed the blonde was empathizing with the pure-blooded fallen back then, and it only made her feel more appreciative of his compassion. Rainier wondered if she would be able to meet him soon. She really wanted to speak to him. Naruto, is he the one that betrayed you? A betrayal that led us to understand one another. Yuki thought to herself as she observed her dearest friend. She remembered their short yet meaningful exchange after her fight against him. A fight she now regrets for doubting such a genuine person, even if she did have a right to her suspicions. The simple admission that he understood the hero, her worries, troubles, doubts and feelings, gave birth to a friendship that she will cherish and hope to preserve all her life. A friend that she would protect from anything, even this sibling of his, she vowed. That's right. The young man murmured, determination stealing his voice. It's up to me now. I had to do my best to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. For everyone's sake, he would bring world peace, or his name wasn't Uzumaki Naruto. An idealist, huh? Jin commented to himself, wondering whether the boy could truly brave the challenges ahead of him. The great hero was intimately aware of the difficulty such a path presented, how one's beliefs and expectations could be betrayed on a whim. Let's see how long you last, Naruto. At least, that was the plan. Everyone's eyebrows quirked at that. After a few beats of silence, Kakashi narrowed his eyes as his mind ran rampant with theories regarding his student. Apparently, this narration would focus, hopefully, on Naruto, and then there was the fact that these strangers gathered here were involved with him. He just couldn't make heads or tails of it, so he asked his leader, hoping she could clarify something for him. Tsunade-sama, did Jiraiya-sama take Naruto outside of the continent during his training? No, and I know Jiraiya wouldn't withhold such information. The Hokage brushed aside her bangs as she bit her lips. She understood Kakashi's thoughts, but she trusted her deceased teammate to prioritize Konoha's safety. The man would report any information regarding foreign powers. So, then what the hell was going on? How did Naruto even know these people, and what was their exact relationship? Tsunade directed her sight upon Mio, trying to unravel the mystery regarding the young girl's relationship with her favorite blonde. Mio-sama, are you alright? Maria asked of her friend and ward, seeing the pensive expression painting her features. I'm okay. The daughter of Lucifer responded, yet avoided eye contact with her friend. Inwardly though, Mio was a mess. She remembered how Ino mentioned that a friend of hers disappeared through the aberration, and apparently, that friend could possibly be Naruto, her big brother. A part of her was afraid what that possibly meant and could bring into their future. Another part of her was hesitant to continue watching, if only because the redhead just wasn't sure she would like what was being revealed. It seemed invasive, with no regard to Naruto's privacy whatsoever. However, it was also a chance to learn about and understand her big brother. So, inhaling a deep breath, Mio resolved to watch the show and hope that Naruto would forgive her. After all, at times, it was easier to apologize than to ask permission. Silence befell the audience. Several long seconds passed as all contemplated what they were viewing. The lull didn't last, however, disturbed by one girl's gasp. All present turned to see Rias starry-eyed, her hands clasped under her chin and a smile of admiration painting her features. Naruto is a ninja, the heiress exclaimed exuberantly, and all gaped at her enthusiasm. Rias couldn't help but think that Naruto was near perfect at the moment, and her heart soared as she imagined his smile. Venalana and Akeno couldn't hold back their giggles. After Nagato used the Gedo Rinne Tensai no Jutsu, Outer Path, Samsara of Heavenly Life Jutsu, to revive all of the people he has recently killed after he attacked Konoha, Konan took his body to be buried. As impressive as such a feat was, it was nothing new to the supernatural world regarding magic and sorcery. Devils, despite being unable to encroach upon the biblical gods' territory, found a bypass through the evil peace system, reconstituting a species' physiology and binding the soul to a chess piece. All in order to resurge the population. The biblical heavens had also produced their own system, brave saints, inspired from their antithesis through the use of playing cards. It wasn't anything to gawk at since it could also be used on the recently departed. I still can't believe all those that died were revived, Kiba whispered, remembering how more than a few clanmates of his had perished. We should just be grateful for whatever Naruto managed to do, Shikamaru said as he ran several theories in his head regarding the blonde's disappearance and the potential regarding the spacetime aberration. How far could it displace someone? The Nara honestly didn't like the answers he hypothesized. And so here the shinobi was, gathering natural energy so that he could gather senjutsu chakra. Naruto-san is a practitioner of senjutsu? Sona questioned out loud, alarmed by the revelation, and as she looked around, she could see the surprise upon her fellow devils. I wasn't aware of such a thing, Rias confessed, trepidation quickening her pulse. Tsunade quirked an eyebrow at their behavior. Is there a problem with Naruto learning the sage arts? Tsunade-san, Yasaka called, a prominent frown disturbing her features, showing her unease. Are you not aware of the risks that senjutsu carries? In response, the Hokage only shook her head, displaying her ignorance to all. The elder Kitsune continued, the natural energy of the world is tainted, capable of corrupting a user. Being a practitioner herself, though, she only employed the ability within Kyoto to utilize the ley lines. Yasaka was more than aware of just how double-edged the technique could be. The yokai noticed shock painting Tsunade's visage at the trivia, her skin paling from the rising anxiety. The corruption will influence a sage over time, and unfortunately, an amateur practitioner will, inevitably, lose themselves to insanity. Everyone unaware paled at the admission, beads of sweat dotting their brows and temples. Naruto, a Jinchuriki, falling into insanity? Tsunade's mind railed at the thought. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. It just didn't make sense to her. Jiraiya wouldn't have learned such a risky art, right? But then, she realized that she had never truly seen her teammate utilize senjutsu, possibly preferring to keep it as a trump card. What if it was actually deemed as a last resort for those very reasons? It would also explain why sages were rare within the shinobi world. Her heartbeat quickened as she fretted over Naruto's well-being, a sentiment shared by all of the blonde Genin's dear friends. Rias, at the party. Do you think Naruto-san was using senjutsu during the fight and caused the lockdown? Probably, Sona, Rias sighed, trailing her fingers through her hair. She was so worried for the blonde and his state of mind. Surely, he had to know of the risks of using such a technique. The heiress decided to speak to him the next time she sees him. She didn't want to lose him. Oni-chan, are you alright? Kurumi grasped her elder sister's hand and gently squeezed. She was concerned seeing how distraught Yuki appeared. I just don't understand, Yuki answered as her heart ached and she squeezed back at her sister's hand. She was afraid, scared of losing her first friend to his own insanity. The elder heroine remembered clearly how different Naruto was during the clash in Kyoto. Was it because of senjutsu? How far has his mind degraded? Yuki bit her lip as she worried over her dear friend. She needed to speak to him, as soon as possible. Within Azazel's mind, gears clicked and turned, over-revving with his own conclusions. It has to be a sacred gear hosting a yokai's soul. It's the only way Naruto could utilize senjutsu, and he probably has access to chakra as well. He scratched his chin as he continued with his train of thought until it derailed from a lone question that surfaced. Or is it something I'm just not seeing? Maria decided to keep quiet, as her own mind whirled with thoughts. However, she reached out and grasped Mio's hand, noting how disturbed she appeared. The succubus squeezed, offering her silent support to her friend, Naruto-sama. You have so many people worried for you. So Naruto quickly entered sage mode, using it to help him sense whether all the inhabitants of Konoha were alive or not. To his immense relief, he sensed the chakra of his many friends and comrades. Meaning that, a happy grin split apart his face, relief loosening the tension from his frame. They're all alive, they're all okay. Nagato did it. He couldn't help but fist pump, cheering loudly, celebrating by himself as he forced himself upright. It must have been so relieving to know his people were safe, Gabriel commented. Especially when coming home only to find ruin. The young ones flinched from the seraph's input. They all hoped to never experience such a tragedy in their lives, and a few prayed to not experience a repeat of their own misfortunes. More than that, he could sense Kakashi-sensei moving towards him, closing the distance between them with great speed. In a pretty damn good mood, Naruto moved to meet him, unable to wait for what he hoped was a hero's welcome back home. One that he should have experienced, Kakashi bitterly stated. He let out a sigh, wishing the guilt would have been exhaled as well. Then he stopped in his tracks, toad-like eyes turned to another section of the forest, wary. Something to his right sensed off. Tsunade-sama, I think this is what transpired when he disappeared, Kakashi professed, tension lacing his tone as he clenched his fists. Maybe we'll find out what happened to Naruto, Shizune spoke, hoping for the truth to be revealed. Tsunade and the other ninja fidgeted in their seats, anxiety making them restless and impatient. What the hell is that? Naruto questioned out loud, unsure of what he was sensing. And where did it come from? I don't remember sensing this when I went sage mode last time. The blonde just stared at that area, weighing in on how he should respond to this feeling. Honestly, after what he had just experienced, he wasn't exactly keen on anything that could possibly do damage to his already damaged village. And this feeling could just do that kind of damage. Or rather, he had no idea what it could do. And he'd much rather check it out and be doubly sure that what he was sensing wouldn't cause trouble than regret checking it later. Troublesome, Shikamaru sighed out, his head resting on his fist and the limb propped by an armrest. Of all the times to do your duty, Naruto. Naruto-kun was just being protective of his comrades, Lee said with weak smile. How youthful of him. Everyone outside of the Konoha group quirked an eyebrow at the green-clad youth's manner of speech. That's the problem, though. The Nara turned his eyes at his fellow Chunin and spoke. He should have assembled a team to investigate the aberration. Maybe then, someone could have saved him from its ensnarement. Every shinobi grimaced, aware that the lazy ninja spoke logically. So he did. Naruto turned on the spot and raced towards the sensation, zeroing in on it with his incredible sensing abilities. Moving at incredible speeds thanks to his senjutsu-enhanced body, regardless of his tired state. He was sure that, whatever it was, he could deal with it. Shikamaru sighed once again as Sakura bit her lip in frustration. Ino placed a comforting hand on her fellow Kunoichi's shoulder, offering solace. That assurance was very much dashed by the time that he reached the aberration that caught his notice. It's the thing that ensnared us, Rosweiss exclaimed in surprise. So, Naruto has experienced this before? Issei questioned as he stared at the screen. Do you think he's been displaced here at some point? It's difficult to say, Issei-kun, Akeno stated as she thought about such a possibility. Foxy-kun has made no mention of ever experiencing such a phenomenon. It's quite possible this event transpired before he enrolled into Kuo. Kakashi focused on the Kuo pact group as he overheard the girl, Naruto's in Kuo, huh? Now to find out where Kuo is. Saji blinked as a thought surged to mind. Maybe we'll be able to find out how to return home from this. Clearly, Uzumaki must have experienced this and escaped somehow, right? It's not that simple, Saji, Sona said. There is something more going on here. We wouldn't have been snatched up only to find out how to escape within 5 minutes. So Tan is right, Seraphal chirped, a proud smile directed to her little sister. After all, I don't think anyone would be stupid enough to play such a prank on multiple influential and powerful individuals. Her demeanor darkened and her presence intensified for a few brief seconds, unless they have death wish for playing around with my sister's well-being. Tsunade mentally noted that the seemingly cheerful young woman was dangerous. Oni-sama, please calm down. You're scaring my pawn to death. Oh, sorry. The female Mao offered a sheepish smile. Leviathan-sama is pretty scary, bucko. Well, of course, Issei-kun. She is an elder sister, Rias answered, aware of just how similar her own brother could be. In a small, insignificant piece of the forest, there was something that was really wrong. He was staring at it, studying it, suspicious of what it exactly was or where it came from. He couldn't really describe it, but if he had to call it anything, he supposed he would call it a fluctuation. As the very air that was emanating this sensation was shifting, as if space itself was rending. It was weird. Naruto already knew that Kakashi-sensei was coming towards him, so just in case this thing proved to be dangerous, the shinobi arbitrarily decided to check it out. Just a few moments ago, his teacher was dead. He was dead. All turned to look at the gray-haired Jonin, whose own eyes seemed to reflect guilt and appreciation. He refused to place him, or anyone from Konoha for that matter, in danger. especially after this recent ordeal. You idiot, Sakura whispered as she clenched her fists. Bad mistake. The second that Naruto moved to touch the aberration, his hand was gripped by it, almost like he was caught in a vice grip. But the part that actually made him begin to panic was the fact that it began to pull. Everyone but Azazel grimaced, remembering how distressing it was to have been ensnared by the aberration. Most hoped to never experience such a thing again. What the? Hey, let go of my hand, damn it. Naruto cried out, as it slowly began to pull the blonde in despite all of his senjutsu-enhanced strength. He grit his teeth, smashing his feet onto the floor to slow down his forced movement, and even began sticking his feet to the ground with chakra. It wasn't enough, as instead of slowing him down, all his actions accomplished to do was drag the ground with him. So, we couldn't have escaped no matter how hard we tried, Tenten stated, surprised that a powerhouse like Naruto was struggling as well. It seems so, said Neji with a grimace. He was beginning to think that Kaden would have been pointless to try as well. The shinobi tried to think of a way out of this predicament, but since his hand was unavailable, he couldn't use hand signs to utilize his Kage Bunshin no Jutsu to help him out. Let alone a Kawarimi no Jutsu. His hands were tied, metaphorically and literally in a way. That sucked. Oh yeah, you're fucked, Kiba commented, earning a glare from Sakura and Ino. Shit. Naruto couldn't help but curse as his entire body began to get swallowed up whole, enveloping him as his sight began to darken at the edges of his vision. One of the last things that he would hear from the elemental nations in a long time was Kakashi-sensei's surprised shout. Naruto! Mio whispered as she watched her brother disappear into the void. Her brow furrowed in thought, wondering just what the hell was about to be shown. The Uzumaki appeared to be the same age as when she first met him, so this must have been recent. But why were they even seeing this in the first place? Then, there was the problem that Senjutsu presented. It scared her to think of the risks he took to fight for his friends, and now there was a chance of him losing his sanity. No, she couldn't accept that, not when she had accepted him as family. Mio would force a promise from Naruto to never use Senjutsu in the future. I won't lose my family again. Did you guys hear what it said? Tenten asked as she bit her lips and gazed at her idol. The Hokage's visage rivaled a statue, and the Bukajutsu specialist was sure that Tsunade must be in turmoil at what was stated. Let's just keep watching, Kakashi stated, his focus directly on the screen. If he was just a bit faster, his student would have been home to receive a hero's welcome and life would have continued on with a sense of normalcy. The guilt was weighing him down, just another failure to add onto the list. Madaka narrowed her eyes at what she witnessed. Last time she peered into Naruto's life using the old man's sacred gear, it only showed her the blonde's confrontation against Nagato. Was the Uzumaki displaced like she was, and if so, where did he end up? Hopefully, this show would answer that question, for the sake of her sanity, at least. If anything were to happen to Naruto before they could meet, the thought honestly scared the tyrant and she didn't know what she would do. Naruto was falling. Well, he seems to have been displaced safely. Azazel commented, still trying to understand why they were watching this. He understood the whole future bit that was stated by their host, but he just didn't understand why it was focusing on Naruto. What made him special? Yes, he was designated as the unknown variable, but that was simply because a powerful energy signature appeared out of nowhere. No way. Azazel's eyes widened as a ridiculous thought popped into mind. No, is it possible? Excitement coursed through the fallen leader, hoping that the possibility became a reality. At least, we know he's safe, Tsunade-sama. Shizune spoke, hoping to improve her master's mood. It seemed to do the trick as the elder woman nodded in response. Hinata breathed out a sigh of relief. Now, they only had to locate Naruto and bring him home. He was falling very, very fast. The air that was rushing past him could attest to that much. The blonde tried to slow down his descent by flailing his arms, but instead all he did was force his body to twirl around more erratically. So he was obviously way too disoriented to make even think about using a jutsu to get out of this, and he couldn't even tell what was happening either, since the world was spinning around him so fast that he felt like he would vomit. He almost wished that he threw up instead of feeling the pain of crashing into the splash water. That has to hurt, Issei commented with a grimace, and most nodded in agreement. The body of liquid he landed in was sent splashing everywhere, going sky high from his impact and crashing against the area around it, overflowing a little bit thanks to the tiny tidal wave he created. Needless to say, the shinobi finally reached the end of his free fall, and he was overwhelmingly thankful that he had his Sage mode on. So he gains increased durability with Senjutsu, Cyraorg mused to himself, looking forward to fighting the blonde in the future, especially after witnessing the fight from earlier. It was quite inspiring, in his humble opinion. Otherwise the fall could have ended up being a whole lot worse, and by that, he meant he would have ended up as a pancake. Not pretty. I beg to differ. Pancakes are highly tempting, Azazel stated. Valley rolled his eyes at the comment. It took a few seconds for Naruto to poke his head up from the water, blinking rapidly in order to recalibrate himself to being upright again, before quickly taking a quick look around him to find out where he was. Trees, pavement, shell-shocked human beings. I've never seen such fashion before. Ino observed the people on the screen, honestly intrigued by their clothes. Have you seen that kind of style, Sakura? She asked of her friend, hoping to distract the girl from her dampening emotions. To Ino's disappointment, she only shook her head, obviously disinterested in the fashion. Was he still in Konoha? Or at least near the Land of Fire? Land of Fire? Where is that? Issei asked as all those ignorant as well quirked their eyebrow in confusion. The hell do you mean where? You've been living under a rock or something? Kiba snarked, thoroughly annoyed with this terrible joke. As if it was possible that someone didn't know what or where Konoha was, let alone the country. For God's sake, it was one of the largest countries in the continent. Exactly as I said, Issei responded, not appreciating the attitude from the tattooed ninja. I've never heard of either of those places. Are you fuck? Kiba, Shikamaru shouted, the strength in his tone making the Inuzuka pause. Enough. Just drop it. The shinobi glanced at the Nara, taking note that he was sitting in his signature meditative pose. Shikamaru, what are you thinking about? Ino asked, well aware of her teammates' quirks and behavior. I don't think you would like to know, Ino. I think it would be best if you just told us. There's no point in doing so, we're all about to find out anyway. The lazy genius gulped as he glanced up to his longtime friend. Ino was honestly a bit unnerved by how serious he seemed as they stared at one another. Eventually, he directed his gaze back to the screen. Let's just keep watching. Toad-like eyes shut themselves from the world as the blonde cursed under his breath, annoyed that he was sent on a ride into some weird area. Why couldn't he get a break? There's no way that I'm missing my hero's welcome, Datbeo. Naruto stated with resolve, his focus on his surroundings as he tried to find out where he was. Oh, Naruto. Azazel smirked. You have my sympathies, but I need you to validate something for me. You need to miss your hero's welcome, kid. That can't be right. Naruto snapped his eyes open and forced himself up, refusing to believe what his incredible senses were telling him. What could be bothering him, dear brother? Gabriel asked, tapping a finger to her lips as she noticed just how immersed Michael seemed. We're about to find out, dear sister. By the way, I believe young Naruto is the unknown variable. Gabriel choked on air as her eyes widened. Observing the serious countenance of her brother, the female seraph focused back on the show. There was just no way. It was impossible. Yet his senjutsu abilities couldn't just be wrong, right? The simple fact was that, outside of the still blubbering people he terrified, Naruto sensed a lot of people close by. So much so that he felt like they could have made their own village, really. So, then what's the problem? Rainier asked, confusion lacing her tone. Oh, we're about to find out. The lone female fallen stared at her leader in surprise, whose demeanor radiated excitement. She couldn't understand the man at times. But that wasn't the issue, the problem was something else entirely. He couldn't sense their chakra. Correction, he couldn't sense anything's chakra. What? The Konoha group chorused in shock and everyone stared at them in mild surprise. Where did he end up? Madaka mused, her clenched fists trembling as the only sign of concern for Naruto. She needed to find out before she lost her composure. A stray thought blared within her mind, but she ignored it. If she had taken a second to actually think it over, Madaka would realize the answer to her question was present in the form of Rias Gremory and the other supernatural entities. All humans had chakra, even if they weren't shinobi, they had it. Yet, for some reason, these people didn't. Is that true, Tsunade-san? Azazel exclaimed in giddiness, shocking everyone present. The Hokage, wide-eyed and gaping from the show's revelation, only nodded her assent. Azazel would deny it later, but he squealed in joy from the confirmation. However, those unaware of the society and lifestyle of the elemental nations only had one thought in mind. What the hell did Naruto mean that all humans had chakra? After all, that certainly wasn't true. Right? Nothing was ever simple with Naruto, and now he had his friends. People who informed the blonde of the supernatural world, doubting common knowledge. Oh, his friends could all feel the headache surging to life. He should know. Ero Sennin made extra sure to jam that information down his throat. Bless his pervy soul. Anyways, Naruto couldn't sense a drop of chakra in anyone, which should be impossible because humans needed it to stay alive. It was tied to their life force, right? What is he talking about? Rainier demanded, honestly annoyed at what she was hearing. It didn't make any sense. Azazel only grinned harder. Come on, Rainier. I know you're smarter than that. Try thinking outside of conventional boundaries. She only furrowed her brow in response, unable to accept the possibility of such a thing. That's just ridiculous. So, the humans of your world all have chakra. Yasaka directed her gaze over to the Konoha group, wondering if they all had the energy source that was unique only to yokai. Okawa-sama, does this mean that Naruto has chakra? Kuno asked with a bit of hope. It would be a trait she shared with her hero, giving them a connection they could appreciate and bond over. The mother smiled down at her daughter and granted her a nod. Humans don't have chakra nor any other energy sources. The best we can do is either learn magic or be fortunate enough to be born with or acquire a sacred gear or mystic weapon. Jin informed his daughters, who seemed to be in doubt over what they heard. However, the ancient human had already reached his own conclusions, and he was pretty sure his fellow leaders had as well. This boy and these shinobi. This just got a whole lot more interesting, the great hero thought with a smirk as he sneaked a glance at the Konoha group. It isn't just tied, it is our life force, Sakura recited like the academic she was at heart, her comrades overhearing her muttering. For Naruto to come across humans without any chakra. She trailed off as her eyes narrowed in realization, yet she couldn't believe it, it was simply impossible. She slowly shook her head and muttered out in denial, no, 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 no. Sakura, Ino gripped the teen's shoulder in an attempt to calm her down. Calm down and tell us what you're thinking. It should be obvious, Ino. Shikamaru spoke up, gaining the attention of the Konoha shinobi. The aberration was a space-time rift, and apparently this place is a separate dimension outside of the elemental nations. Well, according to Ophis. The question you should be asking is just where else and how far could it take someone? What are you saying, Shikamaru-kun? Hinata choked out, wishing the Nara would disprove the answer she came up for herself. Before he could speak though, Tsunade interrupted with a harsh tone. Don't say it. The Hokage exhaled in an attempt to calm down, frustration and disbelief plaguing her mind. Let's just continue, please. Graphia, Serafal, I do believe we have just made quite the discovery. Sirzex spoke as he gazed at his fellow devils who seemed to have made the connection. Well, most of them. Rias seemed a bit distraught and he wished he could go over to comfort her. However, they needed to push on with the show. They all needed to confirm their conclusions. So the blonde quickly moved towards the shore, forgetting all about the pain of falling from who knows where in. Wait, shit! The young man cried out, snapping his head towards the sky as he tried to find out if that aberration was still there. Wherever he was in the elemental nations, as strange as it was, that thing could at least be used to return back to Konoha, right? Except he couldn't. Not anymore. To his dismay, he couldn't sense that thing at all anymore. It was quite simply gone. Like it never existed in the first place. Well, there went that idea. How the hell was he supposed to get home then? Mio, Yuki, Rias and Reinare's heart skipped a beat, all of them disheartened at what they've come to realize. An uncomfortable feeling encompassed their senses, like taking a plunge into the unknown while blindfolded after a question surfaced to mind. After everything they've shared, does Naruto still want to go home? Okay. He had to relax here, and he had to think. What could have happened to make that rift in the first place? Maybe he could try and make one himself? Basically, what happened today that didn't happen on every other day? Oh, the shinobi realized in a eureka moment, slamming his fist into the palm of his hand. People who were dead were brought back to life. That didn't usually happen, right? Issei felt a shiver course through his form, feeling as if someone held a noose around his neck. He hoped he would never experience death or at least a near fatality. For some reason, he felt like he had dodged a bullet, yet he didn't feel like a winner. So all he had to do to reopen that rift was redo that jutsu. And to do that, all he needed was a pair of Rinnegan eyes. Naruto nodded with a confident smile. Those were very easy to obtain after all. And since that was the case, he would get back home without much trouble. As if, Naruto roared out, slamming his head into the ground with so much strength that it created little spider cracks. It's moments like these where I doubt his maturity, Sakura sighed in fondness, missing witnessing Naruto's antics in person. The Kuo pact all had small smiles on them despite the tension still around them. Naruto-san is a very expressive person, Asia commented out loud, wondering if her fellow blonde would join them. It would be nice to have all her friends here and hopefully have any doubts addressed. Yes, Rias whispered to herself. She thought back on all of their exchanges, he really is. He completely ignored the ordinary folks that he horrified by his actions, far too distracted with his own problems to care at that moment. Damn it, Nagato. Naruto groaned out from his spot on the ground, with faux tears flowing down his cheeks at his predicament. His senpai under Ero Sennin pretty much screwed him without realizing it, though it was also probably his fault as well. Probably. No, it definitely was, Kiba quipped with a roll of his eyes. Oh, lay off him. He made an honest mistake because of his concern for everyone. The Inuzuka raised his hands up in defense. I didn't mean any harm in it, Sakura. Did a jutsu that brought people back to life have such weird side effects? Or was it something else that he just wasn't seeing? Oh, it's definitely something else, Azazel said, captivated by the phenomenon he witnessed and experienced. Oh, the possibilities. He had no clue, and unfortunately for him, he didn't have any jutsu that could do something as ridiculously impressive as bringing people back to life. Okay then, plan B. He would get back home, by foot. Azazel snorted, the kid was a one-man riot in his opinion. Ironically, that was true due to his cloning ability. He could probably be a one-man anything. The old-fashioned way it was then. Naruto finally forced himself up from the ground and immediately moved to resume his search, intent on finding out where he was so that he could have some idea of what he had to do to get home. The people that he accidentally terrified just watched the young man go, their collective eyes wide as he began to grumble to himself. No one would believe them when they told anyone else their story, so instead, a new folklore began on the very spot that the orange-loving boy landed on based on what the people there saw. The Lake of the Human Falling Star. It was a stupid legend, and everyone soon forgot about it. I have to agree, that's pretty dumb, Kurumi said as she turned to look at her father. Don't you think so? I think Naruto is pretty dumb in general, so it's actually quite fitting. Jin shrugged with a wry smile. He couldn't help but take a shot at the boy, it was fun messing with him. Oto-sama. Yuki voiced with a warning tone even if she understood it was innocent fun. So, Naruto seems to have landed in a park. However, nothing seemed familiar, Neji commented, gaining the attention of his comrades. Like Ino-san pointed out, the fashion of the people was very unique. Hinata supplied, reminding her companions. It seems a bit similar to what a few people from the other groups are wearing, Ino said as she observed a few of the men and women present. She would admit to wanting a few articles of their clothing within her wardrobe. Still, wherever he ended up matters not since he's in Kuo apparently, Shizune stated. After a slight pause, she continued. I just hope that our doubts regarding Kuo's location is wrong. What do you mean Shizune-san? Lee, don't you understand what could have possibly happened to Naruto? Tenten asked of her teammate, wondering if he was slow on the uptake. Of course, Tenten. All we have to do is learn the location and retrieve him afterward, he stated with a smile, confidence defining his features and tone. A snort followed right after, exactly. Kiba smirked as all the shinobi turned to him. All we have to do is drag his ass back from wherever he is. I don't see why you guys are fretting so much. Tenten's features slackened and a pity for both boys arose within her. Oh, to be simple-minded, the weapon mistress had to question how these two became Chunin again. It was probably only because of their strength. Hey, what's with those looks, the Inuzuka questioned. Damn it, stop looking at me like that. Troublesome. When Naruto finally saw the end of the tree lines, which itself signified the end of the park, though he had no idea it was a park, he grinned. Finally, he could see what he was dealing with. Confirm it for us, Naruto. Come on, kid. Azazel was smiling in anticipation, his inner researcher chanting prayers for a possible discovery. So the blonde did just that and walked out of the park, eyes scanning to check the area. Ah, what the fuck is that? Naruto exclaimed out in shock, completely caught off guard by the rows upon rows of massive buildings that touched the sky. Wow, the shinobi collectively whispered, the sight of the architecture awing them. It was a sight they had never seen before, a community of steel and high-rise buildings. It was awe-inspiring, such was modern marvels. That's Kuo, Issei whispered. He was intimately aware of his own home, living there his entire life. His earliest memories consisted of time spent with his parents within the community parks and, surprisingly, playing with Irina and a few others. Rias and Sona had small smiles gracing their features. Kuo was their home away from home, and they would do their damn best to protect it. Slowly, Medaka felt a pulling upon her lips as she gazed at the familiar scene. Familiar only because it was alien within the elemental nations. Blood rushed through her veins, her heart beating rapidly while her chakras sang a low hymn as it also coursed through her pathways. Why didn't she realize it before? The Gremory Heiress stated she was friends with Naruto despite the impossibility of such a bond. It was why the tyrant dismissed the claim. Though, Medaka acknowledged that perhaps, subconsciously, she ignored it because it bothered her deeply to hear of Naruto establishing bonds with others. Just one more reason to destroy the admirable yet deluded fool, and with destruction will there be salvation. Her heart fluttered at the thought. Either way, Medaka would not let this possibility, hopeful as she was for it, rule her. Not until she could truly confirm it by the book stating so, or watching the interaction of someone present within the supernatural group and her one and only. Then and only then, would Medaka resolve to confront and save Naruto. That wasn't the only reason why he reacted as he did, as the very people themselves that were occupying the area were wearing some of the most bizarre clothing he has ever seen. Well, sure, he wasn't the go-to guy to find out what the latest fashion was, but he was sure that this was bizarre for the elemental nations in general. Yeah, it was really strange. No chakra. Massive buildings, of which he's never seen before. Bizarre clothing, of which he's never seen before as well. A sinking feeling began to enter his stomach, knocking the air out of his lungs. It was a feeling most of the shinobi were empathizing with. They didn't know what to make of Naruto's plight and were certainly unsure of what they would do in the blonde's position. It was a difficult notion to accept, and each were hoping their denial would become a reality, even if denial was the choice of fools. Tsunade was intimately aware of her trembling hands, and she cursed herself for such weakness. Please, anything but this. Where was he? Because he was at least pretty sure that he wasn't anywhere near home anymore. Most of those present, especially those Naruto had befriended, grimaced, their sympathies offered to the blonde ninja. And that realization stopped him cold, his expression going blank for a few seconds. Just as quickly as he went blank though, the young shinobi snapped out of it and coughed, a smirk interlacing his features. Fine, the shinobi said with that very same smirk. If life wants to throw me for a loop, then I'll let it give it a shot. But I won't give up quite that easily. An optimist to his very core, huh? Rainier said, her expression one of melancholy. Many thoughts sprang to mind, but she blocked them out to focus on the tale of the boy who inspired her. A chuckle to her side drew her attention to Azazel, who graced her with a small and seemingly knowing smile. To be honest, it kind of bothered her. What? Nothing much. Just thinking really. The young fallen narrowed her eyes in suspicion yet decided to remain quiet. Such false bravado. Pointless as well. Medaka mused, studying the mask Naruto had adorned after his realization. I know that deep down, you don't care. That was right. He's faced bigger challenges than this, and he has come out on top. He wouldn't get crushed by this, definitely not. But, even then Naruto, you would adapt to the best of your ability. The tyrant continued, her heart and mind always at balance, always beating for and focused on the blonde boy. Because you are special. All of her efforts and struggles contributed to one goal, and she would never stray from it. With that determination in his hands, he glanced about himself, his confidence shaking slightly as another problem just hit him. Great. He had confidence. So what now? Sakura sighed, her thoughts on her teammate currently conflicting. She was glad Naruto had decided to find his way home, yet couldn't he take a step back and think for a bit? The answer should be pretty obvious. How the hell was he gonna get back home? Oh, Naruto piped up, answering his own question. Information. He needed info, and fast. Good, thought Sakura with a small smile. Find your way home, Naruto. Come back to us, to Team 7, to me. To that end, the blonde quickly shuffled out so that speak to someone, hoping that whoever he spoke to could help him out. Well, it's a start, Kakashi said, approving of his student's decision. He just hoped the adolescent didn't do anything stupid. Then again, this is Naruto. Moments of stupidity were bound to happen, no matter how much Kakashi wanted to believe in his student's ability. The first one that he locked onto was heading straight for him, moving at decent speeds while moving a wheel inside a metallic object on wheels. Did he not know what a car was or something? Issei asked in confusion. Who knows, Hyodo? Saji responded with a shrug. Figuring that it was the only way to get his attention, the blonde ran in front of the presumably mechanical vehicle and waved his hands wildly. A burst of laughter sounded out from Azazel and Jin while the rest gaped in shock. Well, those that could bother to express themselves. The shinobi only sighed, accepting that this act was typical of the blonde. Oh, this kid's a riot. The fallen leader chortled. How did mother lose to him again? Rainier asked herself in a moment of doubt. It seems you have your hands full, huh, Yuki-kun? Jin asked, and his adoptive daughter could only pout in response. Yuki was intimately aware of just how troublesome her friend could be. Especially in regards to his education. She wouldn't trade his friendship for anything, though. You know, Sona started as she recomposed herself. For some reason, I find this to be quite in character with him. A giggling Akano spoke up. Oh, I'm pretty sure you would, Kaichu. Sona only offered a forced smile, doing her best not to remember the chaos her fellow student brought forth every day since his enrollment into Kuo Academy. One day, she would get Naruto to understand the importance of a higher education and he would thank her. As he groveled before her chanting apologies and she basked in her victory. A smirk crept upon her beautiful features. That would be the day. A day she would make a reality, that she swore. Naruto. Mio groaned as she massaged her temples. Really now, of all the stupid things he could have done. Maria, remind me to sit him down and lecture him about the rights of pedestrians and common sense. Of course, Mio-sama. The succubus couldn't wait for that conversation to happen soon enough. Something funny should transpire during the talk and Maria swore to capture it all on camera. She giggled to herself. Life was always interesting with Naruto. That definitely got the man's attention. Scree asterisk. The harsh sound of rubber sliding against concrete echoed around him, with the vehicle slowing down significantly before it could reach him. Beaming, Naruto walked up to the man, a question at the tip of his tongue. What the hell are you doing, you crazy brat? Are you trying to get yourself killed? I'd probably think so, too. Issei said, still thinking if the blonde was unfamiliar with cars. Like honestly, what sane person would run out in front of a speeding car? So said the elderly man, apoplectic at the fact that a young man wearing a tattered orange jumpsuit ran in front of his car and nearly got ran over. But the spiky-haired teen completely ignored that, instead opting to ask his questions in a manner that reminded the normal human of a machine gun. Hey Jii-chan. I got a few questions for ya. Do you know where I am? Do you have any shinobi around here? What about a village leader? Or rather, do you have a map, cause that could actually be helpful? Wait, before you answer that, can I first ask why you're using this thing? Couldn't you move faster running? I mean, yeah, you're pretty old, but I think you could use the exercise Jii-chan. Another round of laughter ensued with most participating in the moment of comedy. Quit the motormouth he has, Azazel quipped with a smirk. He is quite expressive, Gabriel chuckled. The unknown variable was an interesting individual. Makes you wonder if he has a filter on him, Jin said, despite the fact he knew the boy didn't possess one. Perhaps a lesson in social etiquette will do him some good. Sirzex shivered at hearing his beloved wife's suggestion in regards to young Naruto. Pity was all he felt for the blonde, intimately familiar with Graphia's lessons from how she raised their precious child, Milika's. His queen was quite the demanding taskmaster. Hell, even he was subjected to her lessons at times, and they were not fun. Jin though only smirked at the queen's suggestion, one he wholeheartedly supported. Oh, that was quite amusing, Akano chirped. Though, he was quite easily distracted. Rias smiled as she gazed at the excited blonde. Yes, he was, but when necessary, he puts his heart into whatever task he wishes to see through. The hybrid only hummed in agreement. Venelana, however, heard her daughter clearly and felt troubled. The admiration in the girl's voice wasn't missed, a clear sign of a possible crush blooming. The matron had nothing against Naruto, in fact, she would like to personally thank the boy for helping Rias. But, with these revelations regarding the blonde, the mother of two desired to protect her daughter from heartbreak. The matriarch could see the writing on the wall. A romance between them would only end in tragedy. Especially if Naruto cherished his humanity. Such a simple person you are, Naruto. Madaka thought in amusement as she brushed a few bangs to the side. People say simplicity is bliss, and I must admit, I agree. Yes, she wouldn't have it any other way. His simplicity was the perfect complement to her own complexity. The elderly man heard exactly none of the questions that the blonde was spitting out. Instead, all he heard was, Jii-chan. Listen, you rude brat. The normal human growled, annoyed at the teenager with terrible fashion sense. Move the hell out of the way or I will get the cops on your ass. Am I understood? Know my plight, old man. Tsunade sneered, reveling in watching someone else suffer under Naruto's innocent remarks. Tsunade-sama, is everything alright? At the moment, things are better, Shizune. This shook Naruto out of his not-so-subtle admiration of the car, as his impatience pushed him to begin inspecting the not-too-common sight of a vehicle. Especially since it was never really used for transportation back at the elemental nations. Well, in a world of superhumans, or at least, potential superhumans, motor vehicles would be pretty pointless. Azazel mused, wondering how Naruto's society developed compared to the mortal realm of his respective home world. Actually, now that he thought about it, maybe he should avoid drawing attention to himself. Oh, 2 for 2. Naruto's on a roll, Kiba mocked with a roll of his eyes. Ino snorted, oh, please. You'd expose yourself by doing something stupid, too. As if. I'm way too smart for something like that to happen. You would infiltrate a pound and interrogate every dog there. Let's not forget the entire city. Ino's declaration drew laughter from her fellow shinobi as the Inuzuka grimaced. He wasn't that transparent, was he? Except he didn't realize that he was doing just that by both stopping the elderly man by running in front of a car, and continuing to molest the car in front of him. I guess he's rarely seen a car in his life, said Issei, surprise coloring his tone. What is with you in the car? Saji asked in exasperation. What? It's a legitimate question. When the elderly man growled in anger again, Naruto took that as his cue to leave before he drew more attention to himself. So after walking away and letting the man go, the shinobi quickly decided that he needed to get information from another source than other humans. As it was obvious that he was gonna make an idiot out of himself at this rate. Kiba opened his mouth to comment but was prevented from doing so by Sakura cracking her knuckles. Clearly understanding the implied threat, the Inuzuka decided to keep quiet much to his disappointment. He would get back home. He had many promises to keep, as well as many people who were counting on him to bring peace to the elemental nations. More than that, he still had to become the Hokage. That's right, Naruto resolved, clenching his fist and sending it to the sky. I always keep my word, that's my nindo. And I will never give that up. Hinata smiled upon hearing his declaration, admiration swelling within her. He was her beacon guiding her unto the better path. A path she had not once looked back on. The heiress would admit that it had been difficult to tread, filled with constant struggles and bittersweet moments. However, her efforts had been rewarded. If there was one thing that the path has left Hinata wanting, it would be the desire to walk alongside Naruto, hand in hand. That would be the dream. Such youth. Naruto-kun's flames of youth are so inspiring. Calm down, Lee, Tenten said, even though she felt inspired as well. The smile etched upon her was telling. You can't help but believe he'll find a way home with that kind of attitude, said Ino with a smile. Even if he can't, it doesn't stop us from looking for a way to retrieve him. Shikamaru spoke as a smirk formed upon his face. He resolved himself during Pain's attack to believe in and support the blonde in his endeavors. Lazy as the Nara is, he wanted to be a man his friends could trust, a reliable comrade if nothing else. If this book is about him, at some point it will show us how to reach him. That motivated the shinobi to pay attention, hoping the answers to their questions would be provided. And with that proclamation, the blonde brought his hands together to make a cross-shaped hand seal. He would learn more about this place, one way or another. Well, Whiskers seems determined. Whiskers? Graphia asked. I think it's an apt name, Serafald chirped before pausing in thought. I wonder if they're sensitive? I believe Naruto-san would be disinclined to petting Leviathan-sama. Say, Graphia, do you think he purrs? The maid could only sigh, and overhearing her elder sister, Sona began to hope Naruto would become a permanent distraction for the Mao. That could possibly spare her from potential headaches. Well, she could dream. With a shake of her head to dispel her fantasy, she turned her gaze upon her friend Rias. She noticed her fellow heiress remained quiet and she wondered why. What's on your mind? The young Gremory blinked before taking a moment to gather her thoughts. I was just remembering the first time I spoke with him. Sona quirked an eyebrow. He was entirely ignorant of the supernatural. Rias bit her lip as the theory she previously formed began to haunt her thoughts. It overwhelmed her like sharp nails raking a chalkboard. She began to ponder what this possible revelation would mean for them, for their friendship. Would she ever have a chance? A hand on her shoulder broke her out of her thoughts, and turning around she saw Akano staring at her in concern. Though, the redhead noticed the unease within the hybrid's eyes, seemingly struggling to find encouraging words to say. Instead, the queen squeezed gently and the small act was all Rias needed. Reciprocating the gesture with a smile, she grasped Akino's hand and squeezed back in appreciation. If what you say is true, Sona started as she drummed her fingers against her armrest, then it only lends credence to what everyone is thinking, Rias. It was entirely possible. The existence of the underworld as well as heaven only supported the theory. That's not even including the respective homes of other deities from the established pantheons, like Olympus and Asgard. Separate dimensions of various impressive scales bound to the mortal realm, each its own supernatural world housing various species. It's not so difficult to imagine another realm of mortals, though, mortal is subjective in regards to Naruto. Still, Sona would admit to having her mind blown, she just did her best to not show it. She swore to herself that Naruto would never surprise her again. When he disappeared in a puff of smoke and all that was left was a log in his place, the heiress had never been so rattled. Never again. Do you think Foxy-kun still wants to go home? I don't know, Akano. Rias responded. Her lips were involuntarily pulled into a frown, but, I hope not. A beat of silence passed before it was abolished. From how old Naruto-san appears, this seems to have happened recently, Sona opined. I wonder how long he has been in Kuo. Definitely not long. However, if we're troubled over this. The Gremory heiress trailed off, unsure if she should continue. What is it, bucko? Akano, what do you think Mio-chan must be feeling? The hybrid blinked as she pondered the question. Despite the fact that they clearly aren't related, Mio is incredibly attached to him. The three girls spared a glance towards their junior and noted how quiet she was. Mio was staring at the paused image of Naruto in apparent distress while Maria massaged the dorsal of her charge's hand. However long they have known each other, stated Rias with sympathy, Mio truly cares for him. I don't think she would want to let him go. And as the king mulled it over, she realized. I wouldn't want to either. At least that's what he said 2 months ago. 2 months. Over 2 months ago was when we identified an unknown power. Gabriel trailed off, coming to terms with all the facts presented before her. What do you make of this, brother? Curious. I do wonder what young Naruto's presence will bring forth, said Michael. Irina, Zenobia. Do you have any opinions on the matter? The blue-haired sword's maiden mused it over before speaking. It's a difficult notion to accept. She glanced over to the group of ninja, curiosity painting her visage. I do wonder about their culture and whether they have an established religion. Oh, I do too. Irina exclaimed immediately after. It would be such an honor to introduce their people to the majesty of God and teach them about Christianity, its teachings and values, about our community. Oh, what a mission that would be. Such enthusiasm, Gabriel thought with a hint of pride and amusement. She is a great candidate for reincarnation. Well, I'm glad we are being shown this. Let's see where it leads us, said Michael. Gah. Just thinking about it pisses me off. Naruto complained lowly, his shoulders hunching over in his failure at getting back home. Yes, roughly 2 months has passed since the blonde first entered this strange land. With no way home in sight. What does Naruto-kun mean? Of course, there has to be a way home. Lee exclaimed, disappointed his comrade would give up so easily. Lee, pay attention. I think we're about to find out why, Tenten sighed. She honestly pitied the blonde, life just wasn't fair to him. On the bright side, he did manage to find out where he exactly was. This is it. Clarify it for us, Naruto. Azazel shouted in glee, surprising and/or annoying his fellow viewers. To summarize, he was on an island nation called Japan, which was located on the Pacific Ocean near the main landmass of Asia. A continent that, Naruto is in Japan, he's in Japan, he's here, in my world. Madaka murmured, excitement arising within her as well as something else, happiness? The Black God could finally meet him, she could finally speak with him. Finally, she could save him. She had to plan and nothing, no one, would stop her. Lifting her sight to gaze upon the boy who captivated her interest over everything else in life, she thought, wait for me, Naruto. What the hell is he talking about? There's no Japan or Pacific Ocean or Asia on the map, exclaimed Kiba. The Inuzuka was annoyed, the dead last was talking nonsense. Though, his comrades ignored him, too entrenched in their thoughts over the revelation. Issei couldn't help but snicker. Overhearing the rude jerk, Mio was right. Being incapable of critical thinking and struggling to form a logical conclusion was pretty damn funny. While the concept of other worlds was difficult to believe, the facts were literally being provided. So, the reincarnated devil couldn't stop his following act even if he tried. What, you've been living under a rock? The hell did you say? You heard me. Are you looking for a fight? Kiba growled threateningly. With a confident smirk, the devil responded, man, you really are a delinquent. All bark and no bite. His frustration boiling over his limits. All from his recent experiences and this bullshit show spouting nonsense, Kiba was raring to vent. Oh, that's enough, Inuzuka. Neji cut in with authority, his stoic glare unnerving the Chunin. This was not the time nor place to be instigating fights with what was transpiring before them. The younger ninja reluctantly acquiesced to the demand but not before shooting Issei a glare. This wasn't over. Damn it, the Hokage cursed with a prominent frown marring her features. So, Tsunade-san, by your expression I believe you concluded what most of us were thinking. Azazel smiled widely, can you clarify it for us? The veteran Kunoichi grunted. It was a bitter truth she wanted to vehemently deny. From everything that's been provided from this bookend, apparently, how most of your group has a connection with Naruto. Honestly, she didn't want to say or even think it. It was disheartening. What if something happened to him in this new world? What if she never saw him again? It hurt to even think such things. My group and I. She hesitated before taking in a deep breath and trudging on, including Naruto. Or from another world, she lamely breathed out. Silence ensued after the statement, each person contemplating the blonde woman's words. A few didn't care, already having plans adjusted to factor in Uzumaki Naruto into their own agendas. However, the few that did care found the confirmation of their theories and cited mixed emotions. Those emotions ranged from excitement, Azazel and Valley, to interest, the respective leaders of all present factions, to fear, Mio and other girls whose hearts had been moved by the young man. Minutes passed by until the silence was finally disturbed. Okawa-sama, Kuno began weakly, does this mean that Naruto will leave? The mother only stared at her daughter and the younger girl took note of the uncertainty reflecting in those pools of gold. The younger Kitsune bit her lip, will I never see him again? Yasaka felt a pang hearing the near-breaking voice of her legacy. She didn't know what to say. The elder yokai wasn't one to make empty promises, especially to her own daughter. So, she did what she thought best and cradled the girl before planting a kiss upon her head. I don't want him to leave. I know, Kuno. I know. The shinobi watching the exchange didn't know how to feel about it. If anything, the whole situation regarding dimensional displacement soured their mood and Tsunade couldn't help but pity the young girl. Out of curiosity, the Hokage glanced over to the self-proclaimed sibling and silently gasped. It seemed the implications of the truth was weighing upon the redhead, who seemed to be near tears as the silver-haired girl by her side did her best to provide comfort, though she wasn't faring any better. Was the bond between Naruto and Mio that strong? Damn, Tsunade was really craving a drink right now. Are you alright, Oni-chan? Yuki heard Kurumi speak, but her mind was overwhelmed with thoughts of Naruto. The possibility that her first friend could leave her behind had her hands trembling. It was as if the bond she forged and grasped onto with her all was slipping through them. She was scared, she was frustrated, she didn't want to let go. I just need some time, Kurumi. The younger girl listened to the request, and while she didn't understand why the revelation bothered her elder sibling, she decided to act anyway. As her sister, Kurumi wouldn't leave her alone in an apparent time of need. Reaching out, she grasped Yuki's hand and squeezed. This was what siblings were for, to reassure one another that they weren't alone. Kurumi believed this with all her heart. Witnessing his adoptive daughters interact, Jin smiled in content. You alright there, Rainer? Azazel asked of his student. Despite the excitement his inner researcher exuded, he could perceive the somber mood affecting the younger fallen. The obvious frown marring her features spoke volumes. He hoped the girl could overcome it eventually. I just don't know what to think of it, Rainer confessed, staring at the image of the blonde boy. The elder fallen only hummed, unsure of what else to say. Rias wasn't certain how to feel, her emotions were simply a mess. The revelation truly bothered her to the point that she felt her demonic power flare slightly. The heiress likened herself to a cocked gun, one push away from being triggered, and she didn't want to lash out and hurt anyone. Inhaling a deep breath, she forced herself to calm down despite her heart roaring out at the unfairness of it all. She had finally acquired her freedom and found a man of worth, only for her chance to be complicated by the boy's situation. Such bullshit. With another deep breath, Rias ceased all thought on the matter and focused on the image of Naruto. What a mistake, she realized as her heart fluttered. She didn't really know what she could have created with him, but it could have been beautiful and worthwhile. Who truly knows? She released a sigh, uncertain of what she wished to do. As such, she decided to distract herself with the show and think about all this later. Are you alright, Rias? Damn her friend, Sona, and her kindness. She didn't need this right now, even if she appreciated the concern. I'm fine, Sona. The sea-tree heiress took note of the brittle smile but decided to stay quiet. Damn Naruto, even away he was bringing forth trouble. A few minutes of silence passed as a certain few did their best to recompose themselves. The silence was eventually broken, the perpetrator surprising the Kuo pact and Tsunade. Can we just continue? Mio asked, demanded, really, of her fellow viewers. She just wanted to get this over with and get back home. She wanted to see Naruto. Naruto slapped the front of his forehead, groaning at the fact that he almost did it again. Damn clones were too zealous with their search, and he accidentally got the same information several times over with different clones. Which meant that that specific line was stuck in his head whenever he thought about the word, Japan, which was located on TH. His clones could relay any information they experience? Damn, Azazel whistled, impressed by the technique employed by his acquaintance. So many things he would be able to get done, and his own personal think tank, the fallen leader, swore develop a similar technique. Sona had different thoughts on the matter. Does he do it on purpose or something? Does he enjoy making a mockery of countless students and our education? She raged within, frustrated over this trivia. A technique like that could be utilized to learn and overachieve in school. The perfect studying tool. Naruto could become a valedictorian with such a technique. A success beyond success. It was unfair. The sea-tree heiress breathed in deeply to calm herself. Several pedestrians were shocked and a little worried about the strange young man that was currently bonking his head on the wall of a building. A few snickers reverberated throughout the terrace. It took a few more bonks to get back to topic. When the blonde managed to stop, he continued on as if he wasn't just slamming his head against a wall. Nothing to see here, people, move along. Issei quipped, eliciting a giggle from Asia. Oh, how he enjoyed hearing her laugh. It was soothing to his perverted soul. Anyways, while the clones were getting information, Naruto himself decided to be useful and try to get some money. He couldn't live off of an empty pocket after all. A simple yet solid plan of action, approved Kakashi with a nod. He did some odd jobs here and there, which eventually forced him to create a new team of clones to henge into different people to get more money. As he very simply wasn't making enough with jobs that had bosses that didn't ask too many questions. "I'm guessing getting a job off the books is difficult in this Japan place," commented Shizune, a frown marring her fair features. "Try the whole world over." "Well, definitely first world countries," provided Venelana, much to the appreciation of the shinobi. The plan worked beautifully and he eventually got himself a decent-sized home for his new base of operations. Through means that probably weren't entirely legal, but at least he bought the damn thing. So no harm, no foul, right? Okay, definitely going to develop a clone technique. The last thing the world needs is multiple clones of Azazel running around, Valley sniped. "Oh, come on, I'm not that bad." "I agree with the young man," interjected Gabriel. "The world doesn't need more than one of you, brother." The Governor General pouted, "You guys are such killjoys." Michael could only laugh at the byplay of his siblings. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.